All right, so today I'm going to talk about Docotrs Without Walls, like Dr. Persowski talked about, what we do, how we do it, most importantly, why we do it. Volunteering with Docotrs Without Walls has really shaped my decision to go into medicine, how it's affected every part of the med school application process, from getting letters of recommendation, to writing my personal statement, to writing those secondary essays, and finally to answering the interview questions that they ask you. So when you apply to medical school, you'll find that one thing is that the people who interview you and the people who are selecting you are actually people too. They like to hear stories. They like to hear stories of perseverance. They like to hear about the things that you do. So inevitably, whenever at every one of my medical school interviews, what they've asked me is, tell me about a memorable experience. Tell me about a time, or tell me about a person that really stands out to you. And there's a lot of stories to choose from, because when you volunteered for a while and when you go out on the streets, people tell you their stories. They tell you about how they lost, how a man who lost his wife and lost his kids in a car accident and couldn't deal with the guilt of being the only person who survived. So he drank himself and he became homeless because of that. You hear about a UCSB grad who went to the College of Creative Studies, got a degree in physics, and was on his way to a successful career only to have his fiancée pass away just right before his wedding. And then you hear about college students just like you and me, who go to his class during the day, collect cans in the evening, and then sleep in their vans at night, and go to class again the next day like they're just you and me. And these stories make it hard to choose just one, but what you'll find is that medical schools don't like it when you don't answer their questions. So I dug a little deeper and I thought about the one story that really stood out. What is one story that captures what Docotrs Without Walls does? What is one story that captures how we go to the need, that captures what we're all about? And when I think about that one story, the story that stands out to me is the story about Delbert. So when you look at these pictures, there's two things that stand out. That big green thing that he has, and then you look at his face. The big green thing, some people call it a public nuisance. Some people call it a Vietnamese hooch on wheels. He calls it Frankenstein, and most importantly, he calls that home. Everything that Delbert owns in the world is in that cart. The hot plate that he cooks his food on, the food that he owns, where he sleeps, the things that keep him warm at night, everything that he owns in the world is in that cart. But that's not what the story is about. The story is going to be about what happened to his face. So in 2009, Docotrs Without Walls goes up the street, and we do street rounds every week, and we approach, and Jennifer Perez, who's right there, saw the cart. She was curious about it, so she called out hello. What she heard was someone growling, "Go away, go away." So again, next week she comes, she says hello again. Same response, "Go away." So she does this week after week after week. And finally, one week, she says, "Why?" And then there's a stunned response. Delbert comes out, he looks at Jennifer, and for the first time, in maybe a very long time, Delbert makes that connection with the society that he's been shut off from for the very long time. He makes that connection with us. Because you see, Delbert is a Vietnam War vet. He has paranoid schizophrenia, he has mental illness, he doesn't trust doctors, he doesn't trust policemen, he doesn't trust people who want to help him. And the reason because he's lived a hard life, and he's lived a life where people who have tried to help him have screwed him over in the past, so his best response is to not trust anybody. But who does he trust finally? He trusts us. And when we're finally able to get to him, we see that he has wounds on his face. Where you see that his ear wasn't, there was a rotting flesh right there. He had red wounds all over his face that he thought were just bugs. He thought they were going to go away. So he said, "It's just scabies, just give me some medication." So we gave him the medication. But what we found was after 6 weeks, it wasn't going away. So we talked to him about it, and we talked to him about it. And eventually, we were able to convince him to go to the ER. And when they got there and they were able to do the blood test and they found out what it was skin cancer that was so advanced, it was going down to his spine. If Delbert hadn't been seen by Jennifer, if Jennifer hadn't seen what was going on with Delbert, he was going to die in 6 years. Delbert was going to be another statistic, another person on the streets who died because he couldn't get the care that he needed. Because the traditional model of, "I'll give you care, but you have to come to me," doesn't get people like Delbert. People on the streets who can't leave that, he can't leave his cart alone for fear that someone might steal everything that he owns in the world. He can't go across town because he has to watch that all the time, and because of that, he can't go to the traditional models of care, and this is where Docotrs Without Walls comes in. We were able to not only get him to the ER, we got him into the services that he needed, and we were able to get him to UCLA. And the reason for that is because his skin cancer was so advanced, there was no one in Santa Barbara that could take care of it, so he had to be taken to 2 specialists down in Los Angeles. And after a 15-hour operation, he was discharged back home. And where's his home? On the streets. So who took care of his wound care? Who took care of changing the dressings on his wounds week after his operation? We did. We not only took care of his wound care, we showed his best friend, Larry, who is his brother on the streets, how to do his wound care. When the doctors did a follow-up and looked at his wounds and looked at what was going on, they saw no complications. They remarked that so many people indoors get complications, and yet here's a man who's living on the streets. He has no complications from the surgery, and he's completely fine. So when I tell this story to the medical schools, they're blown away because this is something that nobody else does. This is a concept that is so new, they couldn't comprehend the fact that people were doing this, that people went to the streets, that people went to where the need was and delivered the care to the person who needed it. So that's what we do. We build bridges. This is Jennifer Frez. She's talking to Delbert again. In this picture, she's actually filling out his paperwork so that he can get into housing. Ironically, 2 days after this, Delbert was arrested for illegal lodging because he was sleeping in his cart. He missed his housing appointment, but eventually what we were able to do is talk to, again, this is me and Jennifer talking to him, and eventually Delbert was finally able to get into housing with his best friend, brother Larry. And who did he invite to his house? Who did this person who has shunned people away, has shut people off his entire life, who did he invite to his housewarming party? Us. So like Jason was saying, this is Jim Withers. He's the inspiration behind this whole model, this model of going to the need, of going to the people. So Jim Withers is an internal medicine physician at Pittsburgh. And what he did was he worked in the traditional system for 10 years. He worked in a hospital, he worked in clinics, but what he was saying is that the people who needed care the most weren't getting it. There's people on the streets in Pittsburgh who were dying and had dire medical conditions that weren't getting the care that they needed. And it's because there's all these barriers to healthcare, whether traditional, physical, mental, or financial, and they weren't getting the care that they needed. So what did he do? He dressed up as a homeless man, he befriended another homeless man, and they went out to the streets and he did the very first street rounds. He went under bridges, he went on the streets, he talked to the people. The homeless people he confronted couldn't believe it. What is this doctor who's in a hospital, who usually has all these tests and all these different things, doing on the streets, under a bridge, talking to us? So radical was the concept that Jim Withers didn't tell the hospital that he was working for that he was doing this, because he wasn't sure how they were going to confront it. He wasn't sure if they were going to tell him to stop, so for 9 months he did this. What happened was, over time, he developed this organization called Operation Safety Net. It's developed into such an effective method of healthcare and of helping people on the streets that since the time that he started doing this in 1992, homelessness has been cut in half in Pittsburgh, meaning that every person that he's gotten off the streets can now take a hot shower, eat whenever they want to, and sleep without the fear of being kicked in the face at 2 a.m. by a drunk person because they sleep on the streets. Dr. Withers is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. He actually came to here. He actually came to Santa Barbara during the summer. I had a chance to have coffee with him and talk with him about communications work. And I had a chance to have beer with him, and he's actually a really cool guy. And one of the coolest things that you'll find if you join Docotrs Without Walls or if you get into humanitarian medicine is that the people that you meet, like Dr. Withers or like Jason, are some of the most inspirational people you'll ever find in your life. They do it because they're actively contributing to humankind and they're making the world a better place. They don't do this for the money. You don't make a lot of money doing this. You don't make a lot of money going under bridges and getting held up at gunpoint twice. So what we found is, and what Dr. Withers has found is, and it's made this movement, this street medicine movement, and now 41 cities across the world are doing this. Santa Barbara is one of those cities. They're in Calcutta, India. There's in England. There's in Philadelphia. This movement of just people and organizations that go to the need. And now we're going to talk a little bit about Santa Barbara and how we do that. So in 2005, Docotrs Without Walls was founded by Dr. Mimi Doohan. This is one of the very first street rounds. They're walking right on State Street. And the reason that it was founded was because here are a couple of doctors that wanted to do the things that Jason did. They wanted to do that humanitarian action. They wanted to do Doctors Without Borders. They wanted to go to India, to all these different places. But they had jobs, they had families, they had all these things that kept them, that didn't allow them to go overseas to do those kind of relief trips. So what did they do? They looked a little deeper and they found that there was a population that was marginalized, that wasn't receiving access to health care, that was socially kind of isolated from the rest of society, that was right here in Santa Barbara. And that population is the homeless one. I'm sure a ton of you have walked up and down State Street and seen homeless people begging for pennies from all these tourists and all these people who live here that are shopping in all these shops, and they don't get the time of day. You don't look at them, and a lot of things, what happens is that they're socially isolated, and this is a population that doesn't get the care they need. Just like Delbert, they don't get the care because they can't get to it. So what Dr. Mimi Doohan did is she walked up and down State Street. She took the care right to the people. And from there, that's how Docotrs Without Walls was founded. So a little bit about us. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, which means we have to be accountable for all our finances. We are completely grassroots, volunteer-based. The president of our organization makes as much as you would if you would become a new volunteer. Our medical director, Dr. Jason, doesn't make any money. We are completely accountable for all the finances that we do. We hold really a lot of pride in our independence and our transparency. We're careful with who we align ourselves with because we wouldn't want to align ourselves with someone who didn't put patient care first. And we're completely transparent because we want people to see what we're doing. Look at our books, look at what we're doing on the streets, look at what we're doing in parks. Look at everything we're doing because that is what we want you to do. We want you to see what is happening. Our mission statement is to deliver care to the most vulnerable of Santa Barbara County, when and where they're in need, even in times of disaster. And to also provide an education for volunteers such as you and me so that we can promote the excellent practice of humanitarian action. And we do this through programs that fall under three kind of distinct categories: wraparound care, disaster relief, and education. I'll talk a lot actually about wraparound care, a little bit about disaster relief, and then we'll end on education, which I'm sure you're all interested about, and that's how you guys get involved with Docotrs Without Walls. So again, that was our mission statement. You can find this on our website. It's just right there, santabarbastreetmedicine.org. So how do we go from someone on the top who is socially isolated, maybe has a history of mental illness, doesn't trust institutions, how do we go from there to the bottom to giving them the care that they need? Because the reason that it's so hard is that the barriers that I was talking about a little bit earlier are physical, mental, and financial. They can't get where they need. When all your life possessions are that, you can't get from where you're at to another place because you have to lug that the entire time with you. You have to take that with you to the doctor's office, so you'd rather hope that you get better rather than actually going to the doctor's office. They're mental. There's a large overrepresentation of people on the streets with mental illness. When's the last time you've passed by someone on the streets that's talking to themselves, that just doesn't seem like they're right? There's way too many people on the streets that have a history of mental illness. And finally, financial. What are you going to do even if you go to a free clinic and you can't pay for the prescriptions that you've gotten? What are you going to do when you can't pay for the medical supplies, for the Band-Aids to do your wound cleans, things like that? All these barriers exist in giving care to people, so why is it that we think that only providing free care to them is the solution to it? And that's where Docotrs Without Walls come in, and we break down these barriers. So there's two ways that we break them down. The first is we follow the food. And by that, I mean we partner with these organizations that do feeding events. Because what we found is that when you put a lot of food out, whether to homeless people or pizza to pre-meds, a lot of people show up. And what happens is there's a lot of homeless people that come to these feeding events, and we set up outdoor clinics right next to that. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. And then the second one is street medicine. And that's what Dr. Withers did. We go out on the streets, we walk up and down State Street, and we also walk up and down the beach, and we find people that are isolated. We tell them we're there, and we tell them we have free medical care. So this is how we follow the food. The top picture is from Isla Vista. This dinner is actually held every Monday, and that's where we hold our Isla Vista clinic. The bottom picture is in Alameda, and that feeding is put on by Westmont students who buy all the food, cook all the food in their own kitchen, and then take it to Alameda Park every Thursday. The same people that you meet in these partnerships and these other organizations have the same principles of going to the people, and they're regular people just like you and me. The top guy right there with the glasses is actually a UCSB teacher. He taught religious studies 1 last quarter, and now he's teaching writing courses. You meet a lot of these people, and they're just like you and me. So this is one of our outdoor clinics. This one is actually Pershing Park. This is where we first started. This is the first clinic, so you can see it's really crowded. This is where we see the most patients. And here's another outdoor clinic. This one's in Alameda. Kind of the chilling thing about these pictures is that the two men in these pictures on the top are only 18 and 20 years old, meaning that they're younger or they're just as young as you and me, except that they don't have stable housing, they don't have somewhere to sleep at night, and they're trying to find their next meal. So when you have those things on your mind, healthcare isn't really on the top of your priorities. Hope becomes your healthcare plan. And what we found is that can only last so long, and you're going to get to the point where you're going to get sick, and when you don't have that priority, who are you going to go to? So this is Mark. This is one of the people that we meet at Alameda. Mark is actually a very gifted writer, and if you sign up for our newsletter on our website, you can read a story that he wrote about his mental illness. And one of the things you'll find about him is that he has a history of depression, and on top of that, he has to deal with all the other challenges of being on the streets. He's a very gifted writer, and I would strongly advise you guys to go check out our newsletter. He's written a great story, and you can find out a little bit more about it. And then some of our volunteers have some incredible stories. This is David Hopper Hopkins. Hopper, as he used to be known, is a drug and alcohol abuse counselor for people on the streets. And the thing that makes that really chilling is that just a couple years ago, he used to be homeless, and he used to be one of those people. He used to be an alcoholic on the streets. And now he uses his experience to help us in the clinics and to help people like he used to be get off the streets and deal with the issues that they have to deal with. His story will be coming out in the next newsletter that we're pushing, and he's written some great stuff about it. So definitely check out our website again. So the second part that I was talking about, street rounds down State Street and up the beach, this is us right after clinics. So right after we finish the park clinics, we put on our orange backpacks and we walk up and down the streets. That's how people know us. They call us the people with the orange backpacks. People in the community and people in the streets just tell them, look for the people with the orange backpacks. And this is what happens. We talk to people and we acknowledge them and we tell them that we matter, and we talk to people, like I was saying, who have been ignored all day. I mean, if you look at the look on this man's face, he's probably hasn't been looked at all day, and here he is surrounded by 6 beautiful women. What do you think he feels like? He feels awesome right now. And even if we don't give him care that week, the fact that we show up every week and we talk to him every week means that eventually when he does need care, we'll be there to give it to him, and he'll let us give it to us. And on top of that, we build relationships. So I wanted to thank all of you guys for bringing socks today. We hand out socks, we hand out bars, we hand out candy, and it's vital because what we do is when we go to the streets, we ask the people, what do you want? And the number one thing that they ask for is socks. Because when you don't have a car and when you don't have transportation, you walk all day, and your socks get dirty really quick. And feet issues and athlete's foot and things like that are some of the most common issues we see. So we call socks white gold because they give us that relationship and people always ask for them. So the thing about this top picture, that's me shaking hands with a man, and that's Maggie Cody, that's one of our superstar nurses. That man, we build a relationship with him by giving him socks and by talking to him. And because we were able to build that relationship with him, we were able to treat his friend who sat right next to him. This man saw the trust that we had and the relationship that we built with his friend next to him, and because of that, Jason was able to treat him. I'm scribing in the bottom right corner, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So where do students such as yourself fit in? We have 3 kind of main roles that I see students fitting in. The first is trust building and outreach, like I was just talking, making that vital, going to the people, building trust with them so that you can actually provide care. Clinical roles, those are probably the things that you guys are super interested in. Getting exposure to patients, the scribing, the pack pharmacy, and also performing vitals. And finally, advocacy, talking about what you've seen, telling people what's going on in the streets, the things that Jason was talking about. So scribing, this is the first kind of clinical role. What you'll see is what I'm doing right here is I'm talking to that, recording the consultation that's going on between Jason and the patient. But what you don't see is that before this even happened, I took down all the demographic information of this man, took his medical history and other things like that. And because of that trust that I built with him, I then transferred it over to Jason. So that trust that I have now belongs to Jason, and now that this man trusts Jason enough, he can get the care that he needs. Because in order to have the best patient-doctor relationship, there needs to be a deep level of trust between the two. And us as students have that ability. We have that passion to talk to people, to level with them, and then to transfer that trust over to the medical professionals. And that's one of the most important things that we do as students. This is Lauren Freiling. She is your HPA Vice President. And in this picture, she is actually listening to, was it heart murmurs?
Heart arrhythmia.
Yeah, heart arrhythmia. So this is one of the really cool things because you get to actually participate in the clinical side, maybe take vitals, maybe listen to the different things that is happening. And what you'll find is all the physicians who work with Docotrs Without Walls are more than willing to help you develop and get the skills that you need to develop into a medical professional. And then pack pharmacy. This is one of the most important jobs that we have because what kind of clinic would we be without the basic medical supplies like antibiotics, the different bandages and things like that. So actually, those are our orange backpacks. We use them in the clinics and in addition to walking on the street. So we put them on tables, and then when you request medication, the people who man the pack pharmacy know all the medications. They know what's treated for what. And the great thing about this is that it's a great preparation for medical school because these are all medications that you will have to learn and that you'll have to be able to diagnose and give later on. And then advocacy. So that college student I was talking about earlier, the college student who went to classes, who collected cans at night and slept in his van, did you know that college student was actually our state assemblyman, Doss Williams, at the top? Doss Williams used to be homeless at one point in his life, and now he's a California state assemblyman. I listened to his story, and then I told him the things that I saw on the streets. And this is probably one of the most important things that students do. We witness what's going on, and then we tell people what's going on. So these are all policymakers. They're very busy people. They don't have time to go to the streets. They don't have time to go on street rounds every week. So what we do is we let them know what we see. We don't advise them on anything. We simply state the facts as they are, and we tell them, you know, I'm just a UCSB student, but last week, this is what I saw. And they are able to make the best decisions because of the information that we give them. So like Jason was saying, the same humanitarian principles that apply to practicing medicine abroad can be applied to practicing medicine locally. That going to the people who need the help, being one with them. That isn't just isolated to going abroad. You can do those things here. And like we were saying, solidarity in times of disaster. So this is Father John. Father John is the Vice President of Docotrs Without Walls. He's one of my role models. And right here, he's talking to a fire chief after Hurricane Katrina who had lost his home and is now homeless. And that's kind of one of the things that we at Docotrs Without Walls always think about. We're always one earthquake, always one tsunami, always one hurricane away from being homeless. And in this time, Father John took the principles that he learned working with Docotrs Without Walls here and applied it to Hurricane Katrina and to help the people who are homeless there. So how to get involved? The first part you can do is you can go to our website, take a look around, look at our data, look at our finances, look at the different programs we do. And then you can look at our newsletter. We're releasing a newsletter this Friday. It'll contain a number of great stories, plus a lot of updates on the different things we're doing, and it'll show you exactly how to get involved. You can volunteer with Street Health Outreach, which is our UCSB affiliated organization. They perform outreach every week, and they do a variety of different other things, and we'll talk about it. You can take the underserved medicine class that we're offering in the winter. Like Jason will be talking it, Dr. Withers will be talking it. It'll be some of the most inspirational people you've ever heard talk. And it's definitely a different feel than studying SN1 or SN2 reactions in OChem. Because you actually get to see what you're studying OChem for. You actually get to see what it's like to make a difference as a doctor. And then I'll talk a little bit about Women's Clinic too, which is our bi-monthly clinic that's a safe place for women to go. Underserved Medicine. These are some of the organizations that have individuals coming to talk for us. The Harvard Humanitarian Initiative, Pittsburgh, where Dr. Withers is from. So we actually have a representative from Street Health Outreach here, and she'll talk a little bit about that for the next 2 slides.
Hi, my name is Adriana, and I'm from Street Health Outreach, and this is a program that I've personally really fallen in love with. I started it beginning of my 2nd year, and our goal is to build a community with the homeless population here in Santa Barbara. We basically do what Jason has been talking about this whole time. We go to the people, ask them what they need, what can we do, and we get to hear their stories. We bring out the socks you guys are bringing, and we get to know them. And a couple events that we do during the year is, well, every Saturday morning we do outreach. Most of you guys are probably asleep at that time. We go at Saturday morning at 8:30 in the morning, and we have those obnoxiously orange Band-Aids, anything like that, and we basically go out, go through the parks of IB and get to know the stories of all the people in IB. And like Ryan was saying, we've met students from UCSB, SBCC, who are out there, and you guys wouldn't even know. You glance right by them, and we've gotten to go get to know their stories, get to help them, and they've trusted us. So we do that every Saturday. And then another thing that we just did is we did the mama kits that Jason actually kind of showed me this slide. We sent a pack of about 40 mama kits to Indonesia. These packs had sterile gloves, sterile razors, sterile supplies basically for the birthing process. In Indonesia, it's very common for them to grab whatever they can to cut the umbilical cord. So if they have a rock, they'll cut the umbilical cord like that, and it's very common to get neonatal tetanus. So these 40 sterile packs will basically be saving 80 lives, the mother and the child. And this may look familiar to you guys. This was this weekend actually. For the Halloween, we put up a recovery tent with MRC Medical Relief. And we basically, you can see we had our orange vests on. We set up a tent, we had cots in the back. Can't really see them. We sent out teams to walk the streets of DP, and basically whenever we encountered someone that was not able to continue, we brought them back to the station, and we did minor treatments there, and if they needed more, we took them to the hospital. So these are some ways you can get involved. We also do a homeless awareness weekend at the end towards the end of the school year, and we're working on several other events. So yeah, Street Health Outreach.
Thanks, Aaron. One second. Yeah, and that fall, doing the Halloween falls in principle with our mission, because our mission is to treat the most vulnerable of Santa Barbara County. And on Halloween night, the most vulnerable person is an 18-year-old scantily clad girl who's drank a little too many shots. And this is Women's Clinic. For women on the streets, it's an extremely dangerous place. A lot of women have to trade sexual favors. They have to have the protection of a man, or they have to do a lot of the things that you wouldn't think that women would have to do. And in this space, and in this every other Friday, what we do is we give them a time to be women again. We give them a time to get acupuncture, to do their nails, to do things that a woman on the streets doesn't do. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about how I got involved. Because the reality is, this is a great opportunity, but it also is extremely competitive. And the nature of that is because we demand the highest quality at our clinics, and because we need people who are competent communicators and can work on fast medical teams. It's not for everyone, and not everyone who's interested will be able to get involved. So actually what I did was, when I found about Doctors Without Walls was through the underserved medicine class. I just went to a clinic. I was like, I'm just gonna donate my time, put it on my resume, see what happens. And what I found was, in the clinic, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't talk to homeless people. I'd never talked to homeless people in my life. It was scary. I didn't know how to work on a medical team. I didn't know the names of anybody there. So the problem is, if you just jump into the clinical role, you won't be doing the best care, and you'll actually be impeding patient care. Because you'll be asking, what can I do, what can I do? When the reality is, you should be knowing what to do. And you should be asking the other people what they need. So what I did is I joined the communications team. I saw a couple other needs that Doctors Without Walls had. Mimi always said that Doctors Without Walls is the best nonprofit that nobody has ever heard of. And I took that as a challenge. I redesigned the website, started the monthly newsletter, took on the Facebook page, and now a lot of people know about Doctors Without Walls. And when I took care of those needs, they took care of me, and they gave me the experience that I needed. I got the mentorship that I wanted. I can talk to Jason anytime I want. And being around all these inspirational people, I can get the inspiration I need to apply to medical school. I can go on clinical times anytime I want, and now I'm completely comfortable working on these teams. And the reality is that it took a lot of persistence, and it took a lot of creativity to get into the organization, because clinical spots are so competitive. You can't just jump on. And this is where it kind of ties all in. Because if you want to get into an organization, whether Doctors Without Walls or another great one, you have to meet the organization's needs where it's are. You can't just think of yourself, oh, I'm donating my time away from OCHEM, this must be great, they must just take it. Because you don't realize that the organization, every person who's receiving an email from you that says, I'm interested in volunteering, those people are busy. They don't have time to sort through the hundreds of emails that we get from people who are interested. But if you look at a need, if you look at what we do, if you come to our meetings and you see something that we constantly have a problem with, and you say, you know what, I have a solution to this and I'm gonna do this, we're much more likely to take people on who show initiative and show that they can solve problems. And when you apply to medical school, you can tell them this: I saw this problem and I solved it. And they're gonna think you're a game changer. And this is the final quote. Dr. Withers always likes to use it. Jason likes to use it, so I guess it's my turn to use it. Go to the people, live among them, learn from them, love them. Start with what they know, build on what they have. But of the best leaders, when their task is accomplished, their work is done, the people will remark, we have done it ourselves. And that is at the core of Doctors Without Walls. What we do and what we work on is bigger than ourselves. In the end, we want the people that we help to think that they did it themselves because we gave them the power to. And that lies at the heart of what Doctors Without Walls is all about. I want to thank you for your time. My email is at the bottom, and you can send me any questions that you may have.